Hello there. I don't know how much airtime to put in between these, but so I wanted to just talk about in this background noise that how Pokemon Sword and how Pokemon Shield are really disappointing to me. Because if you like the game, that's fine. I think that when you compare it to Sun and Moon, it in almost every way it's a better game. Uh, so like I haven't played past the champion because everything past the champion is in-game stuff. Uh, I don't really count that part of the. So I'm not saying that's a part of the game. What I'm saying is it. I think what it counts as the main part of the game should be that before the champion, and all the extra stuff is just icing on the cake. Really, it should be. Um, so one of the things that I will praise it for is the the shortened amount of uh, long cutscenes because Sun and Moon, one of its worst aspects is this long talking points that you cannot that people just ramble on. But it's still a much larger game. Pokemon Sword feels so short. When I got to the champion, I'm like, wow, that took me what a week to do. I understand people have things to do, but when you can take it anywhere you want on that stuff, I don't care how long it is. Like, it's supposed to. It's a $60 game on a new console. How come it feels so short? I just don't get it. Um, in the beginning of Sword, you see that actually things look pretty good. Um, like you pick your character, you can change how he looks, basically on clothes. But one of the things that really takes me out of it is the emotions of some of the characters don't really change. Like even like your so-called rival, friendly rival, because you have like five rivals in this game. It's I know there's not that many, but it feels like it. There's probably four, and they all travel around with you because they want to make it look seem like a traditional JRPG where you have a party, but you don't have a party. It's just you and your Pokemon. Like, let me wander around and figure stuff out. But no, they have to bombard you with tutorials. Like, hey, you don't know what things are? Let me tell you. But then again, it's supposed to be a your first RPG experience, and it is Pokemon is literally for kids. So I get that part. But even Red, I mean, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Blue Red, or Fire, whatever. I forget. But like there's a lot more freedom in these older games because there is so much between each area that you felt like what you were doing in the wilds took a while. That when you get to a scene where they talk a lot, it didn't feel as bad because there was a lot of stuff in between. Sword and Shield doesn't really have that, where you have these like the first route itself is like this um, you can see the other side. You can see the other Pokemon Center from your house in Route 1. And I thought, okay, it's Route 1. It's fine. Like, this is the first route. I'm sure it won't be all this short. No, pretty much we're all this short. Even if you go toward the long routes in Pokemon Sword and Shield, you're going to get healed. It's like they did not want you to go back to the other Pokemon Center or get up on items that much. Because it always feels like that I'm always like charging ahead and not think about the consequences. Almost throughout the whole game. Uh, so the whole controversy thing with there's the wild areas, all that stuff. They look horrible. Like they look like an X and Y DS game. It's insane. Like the low polygon count. I guess their excuse is that it's a internet area, which is interesting. So yeah, sorry. uh, yeah. Well, I just saw my comments and they said they're gonna fit a lot of people. Like I don't care. Like there's a lot of problems with that game. Like I like here's the thing. I give it a 6 out of 10 because it was so disappointing. It was in almost every way because of what I've experienced from other Pokemon games that are longer, and this one feels so short. Like there are routes that you could just go right through. I mean, it feels like Final Fantasy 13, but with Pokemon. Even like uh, Sun and Moon had sort of the same thing, but it had for longer steps. For between that because the whole point of longer routes is so you have to use every part of the buffalo pretty much. Where it's like you're squeezing out the ever last of your PP and your resources, and to see if you prepared enough. If you didn't, you would have to go all the way back to get your resources back, and like that's the cost. It's just time. It teaches a young audience that maybe you should prepare better. But this one doesn't. It's like kids' first RPG without the consequences. It is so weird. I've never seen a routes that are so short in my life. Like I went up to the fight to go find the Sword and Shield Pokemon or whatever. I was like, okay, so this is gonna be like the long trek. No, it's literally just go right, go left, go right, boom, you're there. And I'm like, that's insanity. The some good things about it definitely are at least the gym challenges are kind of interesting to look at and do, but they're not anything difficult, which is fine. It's for gym challenges are for kids, whatever. Then like some of the characters you meet are very cool. Like the leader of Team Yell is not really a leader. It's just a this the brother of this uh, girl who's and let's see. I'm trying to remember like that's one of your rivals. Is that little girl the brother in charge of Team Yell? And if you want to talk about disappointment, Team Yell. They're the most. All they do is make noise. That's all they do. And in fact, they're so threatening. They make Team Skull look like professional thugs. And Team Skull is great, by the way. Team Skull is fantastic. They throw out like broken ebonics at you all the time. It's pretty great. Um, when you were talking about the the rivals, I'll get back to Team Yell. uh, one of the again, that little girl who's a brother who's in charge of Team Yell, and she ends up actually being like I don't like these guys making a ruckus over me because they're like huge fans of, because the brother's in charge of Team Yell, so they follow this girl around and all they do is make noise. And she's like, I'm so sorry for these ruffians. And it's kind of funny. It's very charming because she's not a jerk or anything about it. So she's very down to earth, even though she doesn't look like it. So that's a good character. One of the other is the bad rival, and which is just like I'm better than you, but gives you small compliments like, yeah, I guess you've grown stronger. Whatever. Sort of like how Blue kind of is, except more smug. He kind of has a surprise, sort of toward one of the past battles, and I'm like, okay, so something happens to him, and they don't see him for a while, and I'm like, oh, so this is what happened to you. I'm like, okay, that's a unique surprise, and your friendly rival, which is pathetic. I think it's supposed to be that way because he goes through an arc of I'm never going to win, but I'm still going to strive to be the best. I'm like, you seem to keep conflating two things, but hey, whatever. It gives you a chance to level up Pokemon. um, the other rival is the champion, and he picks the your weakness so you can face him off at the very end. So yeah. uh, so pretty much you have a party because all of a sudden, like you'll be going somewhere and you were stopped like 5 times because you got to talk to everybody who's in your party, so to speak, including the professor, which is not a professor until she gets to be a professor. And there's already a professor, so like, okay, so this place has 2 professors on this small island, which doesn't seem small, but the routes are very small, which is why routes are so disappointing. Because you see off in the distance, like, look at all that land I could be going to. But nope, the hallway. Let's see. By the way, fire and fighting are so good utilities in this game. Like, it is insane. The fighting is for Team Yell. Because all they use is, dark types. And, like, yeah, you can just, especially like the new Zigzagoon, which is normal and dark, so it does ×4 damage. It's insane. Fire is just for steel and grass, all those stuff, but it's mostly used for steel because outside of battle, outside of gyms, fire is the one of the best utilities you can use because there's not much against fire either in that game because there's not really a ground gym. There's a water gym, sure, but this is why you get Bolt Hound or any electric type ever. So let's go on to man, I lost track because I was talking about what was good in Pokemon Sword. Um, like I said, the other good thing is everything does look good outside of that hub area of the wildlands. The wildlands look horrible. It's a disaster area. It looks so bad. Especially when the realistic weather effects, like when it gets foggy from a blizzard, it looks horrible. Like, even in the good areas, like, it looks pretty bad. Like, especially in the ice area, where it does have a blizzard, it looks bad. Like, why does it look so bad? And not only that, repeated animations from Sun and Moon, from even your friendly rival, and all this stuff. Like, and I'm like, so I've wondered, is this the same generation? Like, sort of like, let's see, the third generation had 3 games, right? Pretty much, it had Ruby, Sapphire, and then it had Emerald. But I was thinking, like, what if it's just the exact same technology for a new generation? So I looked it up. No, Sword and Shield is supposed to be the next generation on a new console, on an actual console, and it barely does what it's supposed to do. And not only that, they said, quote that, well, the reason we can't have Pokemon in there is because we're working on new stuff. They weren't. There's evidence that shows the contrary. And I'm like, okay, so what's the excuse for all these repeated stuff and bad graphics in the wild area? I don't see an excuse there. I don't see much of an excuse. I think they were just trying to cover themselves a little bit. But it seems like with all the DLCs they're putting out for and the Pokemon Home, I'm like, yeah, I think I know where you're like what they really wanted out of the game, because Game Freak and Nintendo know what people want. They want to see their old Pokemon into the new games, and now they're going to charge you for it. It's kind of funny how like Nintendo sometimes makes dumb decisions, and we just gloss over it because they're Nintendo. No, they've made some decisions that would make like maybe even EA say we better not do that. Because pretty much you're holding the old Pokemon at gunpoint, saying like, okay, if you want it, you got to do it. Fear of missing out, you know. It is insanity over at Nintendo sometimes. No, that Animal Crossing. Yeah, look into that. You got to pay for stuff now with our mobile market. Like, oh man, because all that they need to do something about like overstepping boundaries and all that stuff in video games. But that's not here or there. We need to talk about Pokemon Sword and how it's disappointing. This is why I need a script, people, because I'm just babbling and messing with my cord, and which is my microphone cord, because it has this stretchy thing on it. Let's see. So, like, I'm trying to think of something else that's. I can't think of anything that's really, really good about the game. Like, it was. Because I'm playing through it again, trying to see if I missed something. No, it's just that I got a better handle on it because I went through it the first time, deleted my save data, went through it again, and now with Fire, the Fire starter, which looks amazing. Um, it's a lot better because I know what I'm doing, not because it's the game. I, I just don't like how they're. So to go back to DLC real quick, the I Love Armor and the Arctic stuff, and I'm like, so they could have had this in the real game. Like, go look at Breath of the Wild. It it's amazing how much is in that game. Or Mario Odyssey even. That game looks fantastic. I mean, most of the parts they wanted to show off look fantastic. Not all of it does. I'm sure there's cut corners somewhere, but still. I mean, these are their launch titles. And then Pokemon, another one of their huge franchises that they make billions out of. They couldn't be bothered to put a full game in there. I mean, it's if that's not what they wanted to do at first, it sure does feel like it. I just feel like I was cheated a little bit, because I bought it for I don't know, $60 price tag, and it doesn't feel worth $60, and now I gotta pay more in order to get more content. Like, no, no, like what you gave me before is not satisfying enough for me to go forth and buy more content. So, if you remember about Team Skull, is that they ended up being not as bad as people thought they were. In fact, it's just their leader that was a huge idiot. I mean, like an evil maniac. Excuse me. But here's the thing. They're still better than Team Yell. I mean, even the worst teams are better than Team Yell. Like, I think one of the worst teams is Team Aqua, Team Magma. Because they're like, we want more land, we want more water. Yeah, okay. But, and then they want to end the world and not see their own, like, dead in front of their faces. I can see that happening. Because that's how stuff happens. Or whatever. But Team Yell is like, okay. One of the most pivotal moments in Team Yell is when you meet them on the road, and you have to go past them, and they're like, okay, as long as you don't wake up this snake. And I'm like, is there supposed to be rude? They're not really rude. They're just saying, hey, if you'll promise not to do it, and you're like, no, I gotta fight you. And like, why? I'm like, I never got that part because it seems like they're doing a good thing, and you're being a jerk about it. So it's like not threatening. When it comes to the story, it's all about based off this the thing called the Darkest Day, and sort of like Celtic, a Celtic feel, sort of the folklore. And I'm like, that's really cool. I like the feel of the story with that part of the story. So you feel like that's gonna be ended up you being involved there somehow. Or like in other Pokemon games, which usually what happens is that you are thrust into the story all of a sudden, and you feel important. Important enough that you get involved all of a sudden. Not so much in Sword and Shield. Like, for example, in Sun and Moon, you go to the I forget what it's called, but there's Institute, because they're doing something. They're trying to cross into other dimensions, and like that could be bad. So you go there to stop them. You know, and you directly conflict with them. You know, and like Emerald, or the only one I saw was Emerald. So where basically you go to the Sky Pillar to wake up Rayquaza, that's what I'm going to call him, to pretty much stop the world from ending. And then if you go further past that, you go to space to stop Deoxys or whatever. Not Deoxys, but that alien Pokemon. And I'm like, that's really cool. And like, because you feel like you're at least involved in the story, even though it's the whole point. You defend people who can't defend themselves, and somehow you end up being the good guy. That's usually how it works in Pokemon. This one, it always feels like, be quiet, the adults are talking. You go over there and do your gym challenges. Because this game is so short, is that they don't have time for all of that. The only time is like at before the champion battle, something happens, and then you have to go to the tower, and like this huge tower, where one of the best moments does happen, where you get a distraction, and it's this the leader of Team Yell helps you by like pretty much doing a doing the standing ovation thing. It's like, thank you very much, like I'm famous, all that stuff, and he's using his ego for his team, pretty much to help you out, and he pretty much draws a crowd, like because he sings, and all that stuff. That's why they're called Team Yell, because their leader is a punk, like this punk band, um, icon, and he draws a crowd, which reminds me of like Cyberpunk, because they have one of the class abilities is to draw a crowd if you're a punk rocker or whatever. So like that's cool. I like that. Like I said, this game has moments, but those moments are few and far. And so you go to the top of this tower, you face off against these steel types, which is why fire is so good. And then you go face the assistant, and then you're told, and then when you reach the top, when you get to the guy in charge of it, the champion comes. It's like, we're gonna talk about this. Go away. I'll meet you at a restaurant. And I'm like, wow. What? I'm like, I mean, that's. I'll let talk about one of the most disappointing things I've ever seen in a Pokemon game, or any game really. Imagine if, like in Final Fantasy VII, you got the Hojo, and all of a sudden, like, Rufus comes up from the ashes and says, "No, I'll handle this. You guys go do something else." But at least that would make more sense there. That would be interesting, at least, in there. But this is how the game treats you the entire time. So you feel like you're getting somewhere finally. Because in Final Fantasy VII, you at least had other things happen before that were really interesting. Imagine nothing interesting happened in Final Fantasy VII, and all of a sudden, like, okay, this is the mission, and then that happens, and I'm like, well, what was the point of me coming up here? It is so dumb. And when by the time that happens, you're like, so is the game over? Yeah, after that, pretty much, the game is pretty much over. Because you face the champion, and then things happen. I'm like, yay. The only time you stop is where you face off in a group battle with the two Sword and Shield Pokemon. Yeah, I'm spoiling it, by the way. Which, if you didn't see that coming from the disc alone, I don't know. It just feels obvious to me that you're gonna either face them or they team up with you. That's pretty much the only choices you have in Pokemon. So you face this giant hand in the sky. It is literally almost looks like a Digimon. And it's like, in fact, it feels like a Yu-Gi-Oh monster. You ever see that hand? There's I forget what's called, like Fire Hand. That's what it looks like, except it's Poison Dragon. It is so weird. So, but still, like even that, I'm like, okay, I caught it. I didn't know I actually caught it because I figured that out later. I was like, oh, I actually did catch something. So it's very odd, to say the least, where it just feels like the whole thing is leading up to just battling a hand with the Pokemon, which is okay, but the lead up to it is so underwhelming. Like the whole point of going, okay, storytelling 101, Star Wars, like Star Wars did everything like A New Hope, I'll say, had the simplest of arcs. What you do is like you get to a starting point, you raise tension, then you have stakes, then when you reach the end, payoff. There is no, those first two steps are gone. They just want the payoff. And I'm like, that's why it feels so lackluster. Man, so so pretty much like I think the only reason like Pokemon Sword exists is so Pokemon Sword and Shield exists just to create new create new waifus, and that's why people. Because like here's the thing, IGN give it a 9 out of 10, and people were upset about that. And I'm like, I wonder why they're so upset. Because I was thinking like, well, they have objective standards, sure, but when you decide to give it a 9 out of 10, I'm like, okay, I wonder why. So when I got my Switch for the first time, like the first game I downloaded was Pokemon Sword, because Sif. If I ever caught the sword one, I caught Sif. And so what I would oh man, lost my train of thought. Oh no, I forgot where I was going. No, should have had a script, because I wrote a review. I wasn't going to go through the review, because that would be dumb, because a review on paper is so much different than me just talking about it that it doesn't really correlate. I should have just wrote down things I was thinking about it, but I think just talking it down had its merits, I guess. But man, it seems like now it's a horrible idea, but no, I don't know. Oh man. So yeah, IGN give it a 9 out of 10. I bought it. Okay, that's where I was going. Okay, so they give it a 9 out of 10. The 9 out of 10 like upset at people. So I got it, and I'm like, oh yeah, now I know why. And it wasn't because of like, if I haven't mentioned like quote Dexit quote, which I kind of didn't care that they were going to transfer every single Pokemon. I'm like, get over it, people. Like, I don't. That part doesn't bother me. What bothered me even more is that they're holding your Pokemon hostage, basically, because they know you want it, because you complained about it. So they decided they were going to do that. It's like, congratulations, you've now ruined it for the rest of us. Yeah, that might upset people, but but then again, Pokemon Home does give you the choice of doing it or not. Like, you don't have to, but you can do it. So I guess there's that option to it. But man, it just feels like that. Oh man, there's new Pokemon there that we could have put in the main game, but you gotta buy this DLC. Hey, we have this thing called Pokemon Home. You can transfer onto it for a fee. And I'm like, why not just do it for free? It's just Pokemon. Do it for free, Nintendo. Tell me you can't do it for free when you have DLC on the way as well. You can't do both. It's ridiculous. I'm not blaming people for having Pokemon Home. It may sound like I did, but I apologize for that. But it just seems like that they're holding, again, they're holding Pokemon hostage. So yeah, I give it a 6 because it was everywhere. It was just disappointing. They added new animations, but guess what? Those animations are really on the new Pokemon. And even on new Pokemon, they still reuse animations. And everything is, you can go on a scavenger hunt of how many reused animations, reused sounds, reuse everything that they did on a $60 console game. This is no longer a 3DS game. It's from a AAA company. People don't overstate that enough. Nintendo is top of the heap right now when it comes to customer satisfaction. and they're kind of ruining it with all the stuff they're doing with with all these microtransactions they're trying to put in there. And people are giving a free pass because it's Nintendo. And I'm like, I don't mind the DLCs either, because DLC is added content, at least. You know? It just feels like it should have been in the game instead of DLC. When you talk about, well, at least there's extra content, you can say. But, you know, if they really wanted to, they could sell you Pokemon on an individual basis. I don't think you would like that. It's like, hey, we're gonna charge you for every individual Pokemon. Like, I'm sure that crossed their minds, but they said, no, we better not do that. So we'll just give them new and older Pokemon with these Isle of Armor and Winter Tundra. So yeah, that's why I gave it the low score, because it's on every way and turn, it disappoints on that level. It looks no better than the 3DS game. Not really, because on that small screen, things may look blurry on a larger screen, but on that little screen you can't tell that much. See, I played Pokemon Sword on the big screen on docked as well as on the go. It doesn't look that different than Sun and Moon did, which was packed with much more content. So yeah. Also, you didn't have to buy as much because you could pet your Pokemon or whatever. I never feel the need to camp either. It's like, yeah, you can play with your Pokemon. I'm like, I don't care. It's a waste of time. I never felt the need to dress up either. I was like, it's kind of a waste of time. And I'd rather just go, because that's kind of player I am. I'm like, okay, sure, you can do that, but that wastes money on resources I could be using for like potions instead. I'm gonna buy myself 80 full restores, get that Super Soaker ready. So yeah. Hey, it's good for Nuzlocke. I'll say that. Good for Nuzlocke. Because, man, it is easy to avoid everything you can until you get up to a gym or something. So yeah, there's that. But, oh, whatever. I think I'll stop for now. And I need to probably get back to streaming. And actually, like, next time I'll actually have a script in front of me. But, yeah, I think this was a good and bad idea to do. So yeah. Anyways, I will see you guys some other time, and I'll be more prepared next time. I promise.